would include directly or indirectly affected. Meaning, in this case, for example, a directly affected property would be a property that actually has a Persian address. So the direct effects in terms of costs and other impacts are direct. Indirect could include people that just live in proximity to the street. It could arguably include everyone in the community that knows Persian's been there. It's been there for a lot of years, and the impact that it may have on their lives. So that's the first of the criteria. The second would be compatibility with existing street name system. Without laboring this point too much, let staff note that we do have a structured street naming protocol in the city of Sunnyvale, within which Persian generally fits. Staff has not been able to determine that the street was specifically named as a consequence of this protocol, but it may have been. It's probably also fair to note that Mandir would not fit the criteria of the protocol. If the council is interested in a more elaborate discussion on that, I can certainly offer that. The next criteria would be appropriateness given types of uses along the subject street. Is it a residential street, an industrial street, a commercial street? Basically focusing on the types of uses there and whether or not the name would be appropriate for it. The next criteria would be recognition of community diversity. That, again, is just a celebration of the diverse culture that we live in and whether the street name would be appropriate given that interest. The next criteria would be recognition of historical significance. Events, people, locations may have some significance historically to the community, so would this proposed rename be reflected there? The next criteria are impacts on emergency services. This basically relates to the ability of ambulance, police, fire, and so on to quickly gain access, direction to a particular location. For example, if streets are named too similarly, either within the community or very close to an adjacent community, could lead to confusion. So there needs to be clarity with police, fire, post office, and others to make sure that that is not an issue. Cost is the next criteria. We've talked about that a little bit. Those can vary significantly depending on the circumstances of the rename request. In this case, there are properties, businesses, a residence that is affected by the proposed change. The next criteria would be precedent. Would the action establish a precedent, either positive or negative, in the proposed rename itself? Continuity and stability. This is a little bit more esoteric than some of the other items. It really lends itself to, I guess, the emotional sense or feeling that the community may have for a particular street. And the final item or criteria is the length of the street. In this case, I think it's a good example where Persian itself extends about 1.5 miles in length. The proposal is for just about a mile portion of that. Would that make more sense versus renaming the entire street length and so on? So those are the specific criteria that have been adopted by the council that staff has used to evaluate this project.
Thank you very much.
Very well. Any other questions of staff? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to make a couple of notes. First of all, we have a large number of speakers in our list, and there are some other items on our agenda after this one. One of them in particular, item number 5, I believe that someone has identified that they wish to speak to it. Tonight, the recommended action for number 5 is actually to move consideration of it to another day, January 28th. And if someone wishes to talk to us about whether we ought to or not, then please stick around. We will do that. Otherwise, if you wish to speak to the item itself, the below market rate housing review, you may not need to stay here all night if you don't want to. We will hear the item on the 28th of June in all likelihood. Second of all, I'd like to... January, forgive me. Okay, secondly, on a little more serious note, I'd like to set a few ground rules for the discussion tonight. Certainly, we know there is a lot of interest in this item in the community, and certainly we have seen and heard a lot of it firsthand. The council individually and collectively have attended quite a number of meetings with many of you over the last several months talking about this item. And we've certainly heard the passion that many of you hold about it. We've heard people talk about their anxieties, their fears, and their anger about this. And it was important for us to hear that. It was important for us, for the council, to hear that from you in those meetings. But what I need to remind all of us tonight is that we're going to be making a decision tonight. And we must not make that decision based on fear or anger or anxiety. We must make the decision based on reason and logic. So I ask you, when you come to speak to us tonight, please show us the clarity of your reason and logic. And please do not try to play on people's fears or stir up people's angers. The next thing I'd like to ask people to do is to speak for yourself. During the meetings that we've had, we've heard many people talk about a nameless they or them. We've heard people say, well, they think, or they want, or why can't they, or they can't. I can assure you that every they you can think of is here in the room tonight. And all of them can speak for themselves. And we're here to listen to everyone. We need to get input from everyone. So when you come to the podium, don't talk about them. Talk about you. Talk about what you think, what you want, what you can and can't accept. The next thing is that sometimes passions ride high and sometimes jokes can